Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to this episode of the Wisdom of Show, and I am so excited. I have Shawn Nelson, who's the founder and still the CEO, primary kind of sourcer of materials, product designer, patent designer, sort of a lot of things at the top end of the company. And I'll talk a little bit about Lovesac in a minute, but I am so excited about this episode. Anyone that's followed me for any period of time will have heard me say things like, I believe business is the most powerful force for good on the planet. There's a caveat on that, in the hands of the right leaders. And we're talking to one of those leaders today, because if you do any sort of research on Lovesac, you'll know that this is truly a noble enterprise that is more than just about how do we make a product and sell it into the retail market and make money out of it. They have sustainability goals that they're seriously pursuing. You know, the goal by 2040 is to repurpose 1 billion plastic bottles out of landfill and into furniture product built for life. Some of Shawn's furniture is older than his children, yeah. So they live what they're talking about. And, some genuine heartfelt endeavors around, having people in the company on an equitable basis, on a fair basis. What is a great company to work for? How do we make a great culture? So, Shawn, I'm so excited to have you here and to explore your journey over the kind of 25 odd years that you've been doing this. I'm pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So Lovesac, founded in 1998, right? You were how old?
Well, I was 18 years old when I made the first Lovesac because I thought it'd be funny to make a giant beanbag, like 8 feet across, and ended up filling it with foam and is on the floor of my parents' home. But I was about 21 years old when I founded the company and started trying to sell them to other people.
Yeah. It's very different making something
Mm.
that everybody else sees you have and go, I want one of them.
Yeah.
As long as you make it for me for free, as
Yeah.
opposed to we need to make these now and sell them in sufficient volume that
Yeah.
it could actually be a business. But I also know I was listening to a keynote that you were delivering, and you got this massive order for was it 12,000 units or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just you really manufacturing these things. That was
I mean, I don't think you could call it manufacturing. It was me and a buddy and like this wood chipper in the back of this furniture place that we used to shred leftover foam scraps from their furniture manufacturing. And they just kind of let us use it after school because they thought we were funny. They hadn't used this weird machine since the 80s. We got it working again. It's kind of like a wood chipper that you'd use in your backyard. But anyway, we made these things for friends and friends of friends in college because I had made the first one. And again, everyone kept asking me where you get one. And to be honest with you, yes, it's one thing to make them. It's another thing to turn it into an enterprise. But there's a step before that where in hindsight, I turned off when I had the idea. I was 10 days out of high school. I was watching The Price is Right. I was bored out of my mind, getting ready for college that fall. But I had this dumb idea. Like, how funny would it be to make a beanbag yay big? But I turned off the TV. I got off the couch. I drove down to the fabric store. I bought some fabric, brought it home, cut it out, sewed it up. So my book, Let Me Save You 25 Years, begins with this little Shawnism. I have 25 little lessons that I learned from these 25 years. And lesson number one is just do something.
Yeah.
Because we can talk about our crazy ideas all we want. And we've all met people who have an idea. Everyone has an idea or 10, but do something. I did not intend for this to be a business. Even 3 years later, when I started the business, I was kind of like a funny thing to do because my neighbors were bugging me to make them one. And so then I needed a name that was like hippie beanbag, love, peace, hate, war, love bag, Lovesac. Oh, that's cool. Paid $25, registered this little business in Utah, and we were off and running. But I'm a big believer in just taking action. And to this day, now we're a public company. We're listed on NASDAQ. We're approaching 1 billion in sales. We have 2,000 employees. And I'm still trying to get my teams to do things, to
Yeah.
take action, to try things, to take risks. And it's a foundational principle.
Yeah. And, we've all heard someone say, or even said it ourselves, I had that idea when they've seen something launch into the market, right, and do really, really well. Well, the difference was the other person actually executed the idea.
Yeah.
I had a great idea. I was going to do that, but you didn't. And, people are primarily risk averse. The subconscious brain wants to keep us safe. And so
Yeah.
the best way to stay safe is do nothing,
Yeah.
bunker down and stay in a cocoon. We're fighting against human nature to take risk-based action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of action has risk.
On top of that, I'll add, then you have the opportunity to do something that has been done and maybe do it a little better or just do it the same and compete. And it's so hard to exist in business successfully that you have a great shot competing with anyone else if you're willing to focus on it.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really simple, but like you don't know what that competitor's up to. All the terrible things that make your business difficult or your idea tough are the same things that makes, even if they got a head start, and they may be tired, they may be bored, they may be distracted, they may be going through divorce. I don't mean to be dark. I'm saying that like on top of having an idea, on top of moving on it, then there's just do it well. Think of all the businesses around you. Think of the businesses you utilized in the last week.
Yeah.
All of them probably have many competitors. And there you are spending your money with someone. So why not you?
Yeah. There's, even in the craziest markets, and we're absolutely in a bit of a crazy world right now.
Yeah.
Um, but even in the craziest markets, commerce is happening,
Yeah.
right? People are buying things. And, during the Great Wars, the black markets existed because people needed to buy and get things. It was
Yeah.
often subsistence based things, but there's always commerce. And I love that simple concept. Whatever your difficulties are in your business, I just want to highlight it for the listeners. Whatever your difficulties are in business, your competitors have them too, and they may have others.
Yeah.
So, you, we tend to focus on the negatives and beat ourselves up, but actually, you may have fewer negatives than your competitors. So, go for it. And it was interesting that one of the observations that you made was they could just be tired. That could account for 70% of the marketplace.
Sure.
So, with a high level of energy and endeavor, you can outthink, outsell, and outserve a marketplace. Let's dig in a little bit into, we've talked about the origins of Lovesac, and like everything, it probably wasn't intentional, but you were opportunistic enough eventually to see it. I'd love to lean in on. I'd like to talk about how you see the world right now and how that's affecting your decisions. Then I'm going to backtrack through a few principles and things. We've talked a little bit about the world as a little crazy right now. How are you interpreting where we're at as a world, and politically, socially, economically, and how is that affecting the decisions you're making in terms of the company?
Well, there's probably 7 or 70 questions embedded in there
Yeah, there
that I
are.
could speak to, but I guess to just speak freely, I'd say that we are living in fast times. When I started Lovesac, we were bootstrapping. I think before that word existed.
Yeah,
I like at the time we were like a bunch of college kids selling stuff to other college kids. I really don't think like these terms that we throw around on podcasts that are available freely, like this one and mine, to everyone to just listen to and glean from. A lot of this terminology didn't exist. All of this resource didn't exist. And so the opportunity to spin something up, take action, do something, even scale something digitally, especially, is so fast and so tumultuous that it is exhausting. We live in exhausting times. The
mm,
news cycle is exhausting. The pace at which business moves and even major cycles, like a pandemic comes and then a pandemic goes, and there's the wave up and there's the wave through and there's the wave down. It depends which industry you're in. In my industry, it was wild times during a global pandemic. Like that's not supposed to create a boom time, but
No.
the choices of the government and everything that led to. And I rewind to 2008, 9, 10, when it was a housing led recession. And to your point, there was still business being done. We
Yeah.
were operating just fine. I mean, it wasn't the best of times, but there's always business to be done. It's never as bad of a time as you think it's going to be. Like I can think of those two events as the worst times in relevant to like our business. First, that 2008, 9, 10 recession. Secondly, the pandemic. And yet in both cases had moments either leading through it or after it that turned out to be the biggest explosive opportunities in our existence. And so I have this phrase again that comes out in my book, just roll with it, and I liken it to surfing. So I'm a surfer, barely. And if you've ever spent time out in the ocean on a surfboard, it looks easy and it looks really cool and all the cool people surf or something. But the truth is, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Like if you've ever been caught in between a set on the inside, you feel like you might die. And you have to hold your breath and wait for the next one, even as another one comes. And it's when you learn to relax and just let it throw you, totally relax, hold your breath. You'll eventually come up. You're tied to a giant flotation device anyway. Then you won't panic. If you panic, you end up breathing too heavy, using up all your energy just to fight your way to the surface, only to get rolled by another one. Then it gets really scary really fast. And so I think the same is true in business. Like you have to develop a stomach to just kind of roll with this stuff because it is tumultuous and fast and crazy. Even as you're just trying to, like, I don't know, sell some stuff or get something off the ground or compete.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the stomach for that, then don't do it. And by the way, sign up for an opportunity with someone else who's taken that risk. And, you can be a part of something entrepreneurial like Lovesac and enjoy some of that freneticism that comes from, Lovesac's like a 25-year-old startup still. Our culture, I think, when people come in are very surprised to find how I think energetic and I don't know, startup-y we are for
Yeah.
a company that's fairly far along. That's a choice, right? But I'm grateful for those people because a lot of them I consider them entrepreneurs by choosing to be here.
Yeah. And, take out the early stage risk. You still face business risk, but take out the early stage risk. I mean, we could talk about you being a surfer living in Utah, but that's probably a whole other conversation. But,
Yeah.
have the stomach for it, but don't get addicted to it. Don't lurch the business, with this addiction to freneticism that sometimes happens, but you do have to have the nervous system for it.
Well, it's well said. And that's why, again, that analogy is you got to roll with it. You actually got to slow down, calm down, and sort of move slowly
Yeah.
in times of great, if you panic, you use up all your air. And I think the same is true in business. And it's like, in fact, when things get really gnarly or you get a surprise, like we've been rocked by the tariffs first in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, you're trying to eke out a dime, buying something for X and selling it for Y, and then the price of it doubles
Yeah.
immediately. That's terrifying because it was already hard enough. And that's the kind of, tumult I'm talking about when I say it's moving fast and volatilely. And we learned our lesson in 2018. We quickly resourced out of China. Now I have friends who didn't get the memo and kind of, delayed it. And now they're paying the price because they stayed in China. And that, and by the way, this respite for tariffs in America anyway is about to subside and we're going to have to face that. But anyway, we're rolling with it and we've
Yeah.
dealt with it and we're dealing with it and we stay calm. And along the way, that's the thing. If it's more than even just your own. I like what you said. Don't get addicted. The waves can roil around you, but you can maintain your calm. And it's one of the things. It's a superpower. It's a superpower in leadership. whenever I'm faced with these crazy things from the outside in or even from the inside out, you get people doing weird things inside your company. You're faced with personal loss or personal difficulty that has nothing to do with your company, but you're still the same human being navigating. And it's like, man, if I can recognize that I'm in a moment of tumult, whether it's in the hour, in the day, in the week, or in the year, and try to operate, try to stay calm and be kind. It's one of my little Shawnisms out of the book. In those moments, I become so proud of myself. And by the way, your capacity to stay calm and be kind, even in the worst kinds of scenarios, is not only what will allow you to navigate them successfully, as evidenced by the fact I'm still here, we're still here, and so are many others who've learned that. But I think in a lot of ways also garner you great respect in the eyes of those you lead or in the eyes of those who you do business with. Because, while everyone else is running around losing their mind or operating badly, or maybe just handling themselves poorly. It's a super, and look, I'm not perfect at it. I'm saying like, I look for those opportunities to then be that composed individual where I can, and your capacity to do so will increase.
And, there are your team get their confidence from the perceived courage of the leader.
Sure.
People want to be made safe, and people want leaders to make them safe.
Yeah.
They get their confidence from the perceived courage of the leader. And so if you're emotionally up and down day by day, that doesn't display courage that people can be confident about. But, if you have this calm about you, and I talk a lot about, it's not clarity that is the key thing. Everyone's talking about clarity. What it really is the clarity that counts in a context that matters. So what's the context right now? Tariffs. Okay, let's dig into the clarity that counts with the tariff war going on right now. And, when there's, tumultuous times around you, what's all the stuff you have to get rid of to zero in on the clarity that counts in this context right now? And that ability to narrow the focus also creates calm, because a lot of the other noise goes from you. You have some interesting turns of phrase. If we just go to a strategy level, I heard you talk about shrink and eat the pie. I believe, I think people would probably guess at what that is, but that's, I think, one of those clarity that counts kind of principles. I think it's a great business principle.
I don't know. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's what we're doing, and
Yeah.
we'll see. And I think of Lovesac as a case study for the philosophy that we've chosen to embrace in the bigger picture of what we're trying to do here. So let me back up and explain that a little bit. First of all, every other business book behind me on the shelf will tell you to grow the pie. I read very early on the 21 Immutable Laws of Branding, and it was a great book. And it'll tell you, like, don't promote your brand only, promote the category. So to make that real for people, Nike wasn't just about like Nike shoes. Nike in the 70s was about jogging, this new trend sweeping America where you just run from here to there. Like they had to promote jogging because it was a new thing, as dumb as that sounds. But in doing so, of course, that opened the door for Adidas or whatever, all the other competitors as well. But obviously Nike did okay with it. Okay, so the idea of grow the pie became an overarching idea in business. And from that aspect, I support that idea. But it kind of led to like a generalization of the idea of growing the pie. And for instance, if there's not a category, go create a category. And by the way, all of these are great ideas if your goal is to grow financially or find a hack to, or find a place to just drive growth for growth's sake. I get it. And I respect it. And it's a viable approach. When I say shrink the pie, but eat more of it, I did not have the philosophy that is driving Lovesac forward even 10 years ago, really. It emerged as we went through a lot of soul searching, trying to find our way. We always had to compete, selling great, not bean bags, selling great couches that could ship to you directly, machine washable with yours for life, whatever. But as we observed what customers loved about our products, at its core, it was because they could last forever because they were built really well, but they were designed to evolve with you. You can change the coverage, you can change the fabric. This couch I'm sitting on right now, again, is 18 years old, mixed with brand new pieces, wearing its 10th set of covers, and I'm super proud of that. And it can probably go another 20 years, probably go the rest of my life. I can probably give it to my children. I'm proud of this thing and so that thing became a philosophy. That philosophy we call design for life. It essentially means things built to last a lifetime, designed to evolve. Okay, if we're really going to embrace that, if we're really going to say that and mean it, like we want you to buy this couch and have it for the rest of your life if you want to. Or by the way, fill in the blank, not just couch. The next thing we're inventing right now. We want you to have this for the rest of your life if you want to. We have designed it not only to be well built, but to evolve with you as your life changes. We will provide the way for it to change stylistically, color-wise, trend-wise, functionally, be refreshed, all of these things, right? Maintain it. Okay. If you mean that, what's the implication? And it doesn't take a savvy investor to raise their hand and go like, well, people aren't going to be buying multiple couches from you, maybe, or fill in the blank, right? Because like theirs is going to go a long time. Like that's a problem, Shawn. Like that's only a problem based on the way the world works today. Like this, the biggest company in the world, Apple wins the award, but the way they got it is by conning you into buying essentially the same thing. This is a 13 I'm holding in my hand, a 13 mini. It's my favorite one. And I've cherished it because it's so small and it fits in my pocket. I have a bigger one that I use for my camera or whatever, but like, isn't it a shame that my favorite one has been, made dysfunctional by a company who just wants to get bigger because that's their mandate? And the sad thing is, I think with a few $100 billion in cash, they probably could have cured cancer. They probably could have solved traffic. They probably could have done all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And perhaps if Steve Jobs was alive, they would have. But they have not been forced to innovate as sharply as they probably should have, because like lambs to the slaughter, we'll just keep buying the same thing from them and jacking up their revenues every year. And so now, if I'm going to actually embrace this gospel that I'm preaching, then I have to be sincere about it. And the implication is I will be forced to innovate into other categories because I will eat so much of the couch category, and it won't ever be everything because there's always going to be other competitors that make different things, different styles, whatever. But I can eat enough of it. And by the way, sectionals are already the best-selling sectional in the United States of America. That's the leading economy in the world. Probably the best-selling sectional design in the world right now by the numbers. I have to innovate into other categories. But here's the cool thing. Because I've chosen such a sharp point of view on innovation, I can utilize it to innovate and perhaps even dominate those categories because the way that we're doing it is different. Now, it may just sound like a lot of crap. We'll see. That's what Lovesac is to me. It is a proving ground. It is a case study to see if I'm right, to see if with a point of view that may be controversial in some ways, but that is undoubtedly good for the world. It's better for people. It's just less, it's just good. Like who doesn't want good stuff that can last? And by the way, change with me. You're right. As opposed to all the throwaway stuff that we've been conned into purchasing in every realm in our life, that will resonate with people that have a brain. But if I can build a successful business around it, that's the part that is equally or perhaps more difficult. But if it can, I think there's ramifications for the industry, for the world, for the consumer that are good, that are noble, that I'm proud of, and that I'm really excited to try and prove out at scale, in the multi-billion-dollar level, because you can do anything small, but can it scale? And so that's what I'm doing. That's literally how I think of like my life on earth now. And I didn't have that for like 20 years. Like I had to like find my way to this point of view.
Yes. It's I can't remember what it was called. It's got a specific name, but the main manufacturers of the light bulbs, in the 1920s got together and figured out that light bulbs were lasting too long.
Yeah.
Too many hours, and they consciously designed failure into the light bulb. And now we have redundancy built into almost everything: psychological redundancy, fashion redundancy, technological redundancy, to cause the repurchase. But I think you're tapping into a deep psychological truth for most people, because we hear people saying all the time, things aren't made like they used to be.
That's right.
You know, you used to buy a washing machine and it lasted 20 years. Now it lasts 7, you know.
Yeah.
In a previous episode of the show, I interviewed Alison, the CEO of Good 360, and taking unsold product in volume from the retailers who were going to send it to landfill, right? And
Hmm.
getting it into the hands of people that need it but can't afford it without it finding its way onto the eBay market, you know.
Yeah.
Um, at a deep psychological level, I think most people would agree with you, right?
Of course. It's
The
because
challenge
it's
is what,
obvious.
yeah, and the challenge is how do they find the companies that believe that and are trying to bring something to market, you know, within that accord, because it takes more work to be a noble enterprise, to be honest.
Let me go one step further. How do they believe it?
Yeah,
It's one thing to find the companies that believe it, but how do they even believe it? You know, in a world where like, how do you believe anything? How do you even believe what you're seeing on the news? How do you, with deep fakes, with corporate, with capitalism run amok? I mean, capitalism has a bad name. People like me who build companies, in a lot of people's eyes, have a bad name because we've raped and pillaged the earth.
yeah,
Right. I mean, there's nothing I love more than of course the famous founder of Mohawk Industries, the carpet maker that it started his speech, fellow plunderers of the earth, and this is a guy who devoted his life to trying to make it better, and they did a lot of good, in their industry by being committed to it. But it's a never-ending cycle. But look, there's no doubt that the things that I'm saying are true on a fundamental level. You don't have to have a brain to know that. And by the way, they're not even hiding it anymore. For a lot of years, Apple, these companies skirted the idea, and it's like, but we all know why, you can't remove the battery. What, do we forget that technology? Like, I remember doing that on lots of cell phones for a long time.
yeah,
We somehow forget the magic of having a replaceable battery. We know the reason for that. We laugh about it, but it's like not even and this idea of planned obsolescence is not some conspiracy theory. In fact, it was a an academic originally an academic thesis as a way to lift the United States out of the Great Depression. Hey, General Electric, could you please make your refrigerators, on a replacement cycle of less than 20 years, so people will buy more refrigerators, right? And by the way, it was heralded in the 1950s. It won awards for being such an innovative mechanism for driving economic growth. Planned obsolescence in all of its forms, perceived
yeah,
obsolescence, stylistic obsolescence, all these things. And so here we are now after, I don't know, 75, almost 100 years of that cycle being at play, to where we can't even, that's just the way it is. And even if we think it's not great, and even if we know that it's not good, even for us psychologically, physically, these cycles are not good for us. Like, they're trying to convince me that all my jeans are too tight now, And by the way, if I won't succumb, they will unleash the youth against me to basically call me names and make me feel old and drive me into submission. If that's not Maoist,
yeah,
communism at play against a capitalistic end, I don't know what is. Like, they're trying to shame me into buying baggy jeans again. I wore those when I was in high school,
yeah.
as if they were so unique, as if they were so clever, right? And and meanwhile, the youth think they're so clever by wearing baggy jeans again, when the truth is they've just been conned into it by a bunch of old people who just want to take their money again.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, listen, that's the game. It's a very effective mechanism to drive economic growth. I get it. I'm a part of it to some degree. We've got stores and malls and blah, and we make stuff. But I am totally intrigued by trying to break that cycle. So I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know how consumers find those companies. I can tell you that I'm one. There are others out there who, may not be preaching the exact same message I am. But there are kindred spirits. I'm friends with some of them. And over time, that's the thing. I view my mission as not just to build successfully this company, to do it at its scale and create profit while I'm doing it, so it can sustain and really reach people. Because by the way, people that mess with my stuff, they do start thinking differently about the other crap they're buying.
yeah,
They start to get pissed about all the other, you know, boondoggles they're sucked into that won't allow them to maintain and upgrade and do all the things. And now we're trading in at
Yeah.
Lovesac, all these things that you can only do with our products. So part of it is doing it at scale, but another part of it is changing the minds of the consumer, because the consumers have been duped into behaving badly. They're not bad people. They've just, through the cycles of life as they know it, through the world as it exists, they're trained that this is just the way things are.
Yeah. There's that fascinating show on Netflix, about the consumer hoax. I can't remember what it's called, but the redundancy built into product and
Yes.
mechanisms for placement and positioning and pricing and everything else. You should make a Netflix show about sustainable product. You have. Let's talk about how this works with investors. You're a publicly listed company.
Mhm.
You have a whole lot of ESG goals. You care about responsible supply chain and human rights within that. You care about the environment, and these are all publicly available statements. These are effectively,
And by the way, fallen out of favor in many respects with the whole
yeah,
ESG kind of,
sure,
tail whip that's happened
yeah,
more recently.
which is more, more of that tumultuous time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you are public with it. It's on your website. People can see it. Your
Sure.
commitments to ESG, your commitments to equitable employment, your commitments to workforce. Um, these are not being hidden.
No.
And so you do you attract a certain kind of investor as a publicly listed company? I mean, for the most part in the markets, the dividend is calculated after, you know, um, tax and depreciation and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. There's no measure before the dividend is paid on environmental responsibility or employment responsibility. It might be different if the markets got paid after those things were attended to, but do you attract a different kind of investor or a different kind of interest level within that investor community?
Probably. I mean, if you want to judge me by my stock price, then, we're not doing great. You can buy Lovesac stock at almost the same price you could buy it for not long after our IPO 7 years ago. And here's the funny part. We're 7 times the size we were. We're profitable. We're cash flow. Now it's a different day. Markets are at a different place. My industry, COVID hangover. People aren't excited about furniture companies and even product companies at the moment, and that's fine. That's market dynamics. But like I said, undoubtedly, the implication for those investors who are paying attention to this stuff that I'm putting out there very openly is that if I don't find the way to innovate into other categories that I can likewise dominate, I can only get so big selling sectional sofas to people who want to afford our expensive sectional sofas because they can do all these things. And I love the challenge. This is my point. I've been reading a lot of Ayn Rand, and I
Yeah,
love how her characters, mutually respect those other characters that want the competition, even if they're their mortal enemies. They know they can sniff out like you're one of me. In other words, like, what am I trying to say to you? I'm not worried about our stock price because I'm so confident that through the lens of design for life, we are creating, you're not seeing this because it's not public yet, but we are creating new products that will, like Sactionals have been, become the apex predator of those categories and dominate and buy us another billion in sales. I'm very confident in that. Now, the best part is here I am saying it publicly. You'll get to judge over the next couple of years whether or not I was right.
yeah,
But I feel convicted. And so the stock price, if I'm right, will take care of itself because our revenues will double over time. Obviously our profits will go with it, and investors will have no choice. Meanwhile, consumers, will obviously, I think, resonate with what we're doing, not just because they'll be competitive. See, you have to leverage self-interest. One of the fundamental principles of design for life is that it's not trying to beat people over the head to buy something sustainable because they feel guilty. And that's the problem with the whole sustainability movement.
hmm,
I'm about sustain hyphen ability. Like I'm making a thing that can actually sustain and not just be really good. Because if it's really good, you still might not hang on to it because you're tired of it. You want something novel, you want something new. So you have to design it to evolve. That's a very high bar. Like none of my competitors have to do that. They just have to make something pretty good that can compete at a price, whatever. When you try to set out to make something that can last a whole lifetime and evolve with you as life changes, not only will you generate new intellectual property that doesn't exist before, and by the way, not only will it take a long time and a lot of investment to do it, but you will likely invent the apex predator and apex predator in that category. And then you can have huge financial gains. Again, I'm comfortable explaining all this because you or any other investor listening would be able to watch and see if I'm right. And that's what I want to do. I want to prove my case in the harsh light of the markets. I want to dominate the top line. I want to obviously grow the bottom line, and I want to do it while making these truly sustained, hyphenable products. Everyone's recycling. That's why we don't even talk about the recycled bottles thing. Yes, we're doing it. Did you know after Nike, you won't believe this, not Nike, after Walmart and Amazon, Lovesac is Reprieve's. That's the biggest recycled bottle facilitator in the world. We are Reprieve's third most prolific participant.
Hmm.
Lovesac after Amazon and Walmart. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You'll hardly see us brag about it because everyone's recycling bottles at this point and whatever, right? They're true sustainability messages, stuff that can actually sustain. Who's talking about that? Like nobody's talking about that. Yet most humans can kind of like be like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds good. That sounds like something I would support as long as you have it in my color, in my style. It can do all these things, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm describing is a hard approach. But if I'm successful, like we have been in sectionals, we will be wildly successful. I have more market share than any firm I know of in sectional sofas because of these exact dynamics. And I want to go duplicate it again and again and again. And eventually, through that mechanism, the consumer will slowly learn there's a better path that I don't have to compromise. Again, you have to leverage their self-interest. This is good for them. It's not just vegetables they're forced to eat.
Yes. One of the issues when someone discovers a new path or creates a new path, they do the heavy lifting to create a new path towards some level of success. If you're the first, one of the arguments is it shows everybody else what to do and they can follow, right? And so the market comes at you faster. But what people don't really fully appreciate is the lessons learned and the nuances of genius that are formed in the discovery cycle are the very corners the competitors that follow cut.
Mm-hmm.
And that means they never get to the same level or they don't get the same level of recognition from the marketplace. There's just something innate that comes from being in the furnace of development and innovation. And these nuances of genius, I call them. I'm fascinated by the idea of company genius. Our entire business, for example, is based on helping companies codify the core genius of a company into a single visual model, right? That's what we do.
Cool.
And these nuances of genius that you find in that journey are the exact corners that competitors cut. And they don't realize they're even cutting them. Why? Mm-hmm. Because the philosophy isn't aligned. They're not trying to build furniture for life. They're trying to build something to bring to market to make money off in a new opportunity area that you've created, sort of thing. So how do we do that but cut some corners? What's really behind it is the commitment you have as a company around being a noble enterprise. And that brings us to the conversation about people, team, culture. We live in an AI-driven world. I'm not going to ask you to dive into how's AI impacting manufacturing and, what's the technology doing for you. I think people have had plenty of that stuff thrown at them. And I've certainly had guests that have gone deep onto the technical side of AI. But you have a very people-focused company. You talk a lot about team. You talk a lot about a world-class team.
Yeah.
You're an avid reader. I know you've had book clubs inside the company and you do a whole bunch of stuff. I'd love to kind of lead you into a conversation about people and leadership and team, particularly in the context of an AI world, right? Where everyone's talking about, hey, we can get rid of 300 staff, we can get rid of 1,000 staff. I'm sure that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, companies actually are still people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if they achieve, great, I don't know, call them cutbacks with some of the efficiencies that AI will bring, I'm a firm believer in at least two things. One, there are still going to be plenty of people involved. Two, those people will just have new skills. Just like you and I can probably use a laptop computer just great. My mom can't, you
Yeah.
know, so I have a different skill set than her generation had.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the same will be true, but also I think that there, just like all movements, even the ESG movement, there will be a backlash to AI that will also open plenty of doors for those who want to compete in the world of realness. And so you can choose to compete in the world of AI and you can choose to compete in the world of realness. And I think there's going to be opportunities in both because of what AI changes in our world. And just like, by the way, like I feel like the biggest dope because I'm not one of my buddies who's become a bazillionaire with some tech company. I'm slinging couches and beanbags in shopping malls. I'm doing just fine. And by the way, a lot of them would trade places with me to have some of the aspects of my business that I have, right? And so the real world didn't evaporate. And trust me, when I opened my first mall location in 2001, as a kid on credit cards trying to get into a mall that didn't even want me there, they let us in there finally because they needed to fill a space. All there were articles written about how the mall is dead,
Yeah.
get out quickly. You know what I mean? And here we are in 2025 with thriving A plus centers that we still have to fight our way into and whatever with even the highest sales per square feet in our whole category, right? So, and obviously crappy malls have gone the way. I mean, everything's evolving, like the dinosaurs, the weak ones fall out, right? And the chickens are still around. But like we have opportunities constantly. We just have to, like I said earlier in the podcast, roll with it and adapt and change. And so when it comes to people, what is a company if not a company of people? I mean, I think it's endemic in the word, the company you keep.
Mm.
And whether it's you and a buddy and a laptop in the extreme case, and congratulations if you can, get to 1 billion that way. And it's going to happen with leveraging AI. And it has happened in the world of tech, to some degree. But then there's companies like mine, still 2,000 people that can do great work together. And I think I mean, I could talk about people all day. Let's go right to the pinnacle. So I have a little Shaunism again in my book. Let me save you 25 years. Get it right at the top, and the rest will take care of itself. And so, as a CEO, I am maniacal about being radically honest, not only about my own, hopefully, existence, performance, expectations, like I call, self-awareness is at the root of all success, but that of my team. And it's hard because these are people I've loved and have worked with for years and years in most cases. And I can tell you that to some degree, and I don't have to be specific about, where you draw the line on your top team. There's lots of ways you could slice and dice that, but you are always evolving. I'll just put it that way. And if you're not, you will be evolved. And
Mm.
so you can either do it proactively or you can have it done to you. But every time I've ever dragged my feet or been dishonest about, where my team or where individuals, it's not even about a team, about individuals are on the spectrum of fit for purpose and, the future, I have paid a dear price. And so with a company that hangs the word love over the doorway, wears it on a t-shirt, it's our ticker on Wall Street, balancing our number one core value, which by the way, is not what you think. Our number one core value at Lovesac, our number one core value at Lovesac is top ambition.
Mm.
Not what you expected from a little beanbag company.
Uh,
Our ultimate core value, number 5, is love matters.
yeah.
And we are constantly living in the tension of top ambition and love matters. We talk about it openly. We are relentless with our language. We are relentless with our internal rhetoric, with our conversations with each other and balancing these ideas. And it's not easy. But that's, by the way, why they pay you the big bucks. You can become a multi-millionaire, 100-millionaire, billionaire, being an entrepreneur or just a great leader.
Mm.
That's why they pay you the big bucks. It is difficult to reconcile. And most of the real big buck decisions that true leaders have to make are somewhere between opposing ideas. And isn't that the definition of intelligence, right? To be able to wrangle two opposing ideas simultaneously and
Yep.
still come to an outcome. And so I don't have like a great answer for you other than to say people are everything. People are not a thing to be tolerated. Culture is not a thing to be cultivated. Your culture is the brand. Your success is indicative of your culture. And you can even have a cutthroat, money grubbing culture. That can be the culture, and you can have success on those terms. But the success in other terms will have been sacrificed.
Yeah.
So a lot of it comes back to how you define success.
Well, there's actually a lot that could be unpacked in that, not least of which is, self-awareness is the key to all success. I mean, you made that statement. I can't just let that slide by.
It's everything.
It's
It's the
everything.
whole thing.
You
It's
know?
at the root in my belief.
Yeah.
It is the root.
And I love the tension between, um, you know, uh, what was the first core value?
Top ambition
Top,
and love
yeah.
matters.
I love the tension between let's go and get this, and then love matters. I've interviewed a number of military leaders, brigadier generals, people that have led forces into deployment zones and things.
Mm,
And the interesting thing about military leaders is they're not what you might expect once you
mm,
get into a deep conversation with them. I mean, they are great students of history, all of them.
mm,
Um, they are absolutely this top ambition. We're going into this theatre of war to win, but they're very people-driven people,
mm.
actually. And they have a respectfulness for the enemy who are also just soldiers on the ground. They have that tension that you're talking
Mm.
about in the most difficult of competitive zones, right? Where people are
Highest
trying
stakes.
to kill each other. It's quite fascinating. And that is leadership. Leadership is not easy. And but companies are built on people, and we run the real risk of forgetting that. You know,
Sure.
the other thing that concerns me about AI, and this is going to lead us into three quick questions just to wrap us up with you. I do have concerns that AI will dumb us down,
Mm,
and you're an avid reader.
mm.
Um, you constantly seem to want to encourage other people to read.
Yeah.
You're reading Ayn Rand right now, who I think
Mhm.
is one of the bodies of work everybody should read.
Yeah.
What what's the book that you feel has impacted you the most? I know that's for an avid reader. I know that's like trying to pluck out, which is your favorite child kind of thing. But
Mm.
out of what book really struck you that it keeps hanging around in your mind?
I mean, one that I've read multiple times. I just prescribed it to my daughter. I'm trying to convince her to read it. She's still, I probably protested too much, but is Psycho Cybernetics. I don't know if
All
you
right.
know this book.
Yeah. I do know the book.
Maxwell Maltz. I believe Psycho Cybernetics. I view it as really the grandfather of the entire self-help movement. I'm always reading something in self-help, every third book. I think that we should be. There's just such a prolific body of work there. There's just a million titles that are good for your soul. These because they're most of them are based on either true scientific, call them psychological principles, or spiritual, eternal truths that repackaged in another way. There's always a new take on them. But
Mm.
anyway, Psycho Cybernetics, if you get to the reason I love it so much is it was written by uh, a plastic surgeon
Yeah.
who was so stymied by these mostly women who would come in and swear that he didn't fix their nose, even though he could show them before and after pictures that were radically different. They couldn't see it. They couldn't see it because their self image of, let's say, to put it simply, I'm a person with a big nose, was so ingrained in them that they literally, their eyeballs and their brain could not process the stark differences
Yeah.
in straightforward imagery that obviously, and so they demanded to be operated on again. So he went deep into trying to understand this and gets into explaining, how important our self-talk is. I think it's the basis for manifesting, like imagining our best outcomes in great detail, and then by the way, they somehow magically happen. and then I pair a book like that was a unique, I don't know, a unique book with even some of the reading I'm doing in like quantum theory. And I
Yeah.
know that sounds like weird, but as you start to learn about electron entanglement and like this idea that like, I mean, I know it sounds really weird and like, I don't know, existential or philosophical or spiritual or something, but I just think that there's a lot about this universe. There's a lot about our brains. There's a lot about our spirits that cannot be explained, that we can see the evidences of, but cannot even explain them. I mean, one that we live with every day is just consciousness, waking
Yeah.
up. They
Yeah.
still can't solve that. And yet we all do it, including the scientists that are studying it. Every day we experience consciousness,
Yeah.
and they've been studying it for a century. And so I just believe that this stuff resonates. That's the reason you see these themes recycled in 1,000 different books over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Einstein said just the observation of the experiment changes the results.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. If you just observe the movement of light through a tube, you change the results because you've got to give yourself a point of observation. Have you read The Holographic Universe?
No.
You would enjoy that, particularly
Cool.
if you're in the quantum world at the moment with some of your reading.
I'll order it now.
Yeah, The Holographic Universe. You're an inventor. Now, if you could have invented anything that already is, not furniture, something else, is there something you would love to have been the inventor of that the world has now?
Oh, the automobile. I think the automobile is such a fundamental, I don't know. It's just, I've got a lot of love for cars. I love even watching how that whole world is evolving, even if they turn into something completely different. And I just think the industry that's evolved around it really has captured me. I mean, it's a big inspiration for what I'm doing, right? Like it's pretty soon I'll be the only car dealer with used cars in the form of our sectionals that you can trade in, trade up as you move through life, allow others to get into it at a price because our product was designed with some of that sameness at its core.
Hmm.
And so I just have a lot of respect, not for cars, for like the industry and how it's I don't know, how it's changed the world.
Well, often the greatest inventions behind something are not the main thing.
Hmm.
The real invention for the light bulb was not actually the light bulb, it was the power distribution system.
Right.
It's getting the power to the house, right?
Hmm.
Henry Ford invented the motor vehicle dealership network. And the idea that the service department that services the car should absorb all the cost of the dealership
Yeah.
so you can sell the car at no profit, right?
Yeah. And
It was
still
it was the
here.
dealership network that he invented more than the Model T Ford, right? So
Well said.
there's always a story
Well said.
behind the pinnacle invention. So you might aim this at your daughter, or anyone else you like, but if once you've gone, people remember one statement from you. That's a big question, but there's one statement that keeps running through your head. Shawn Nelson said this. What would you like that to be?
Oh,
Something little to finish on.
I mean, there's a lot of big ideas to aspire to, but I think if I'm being really honest, so I mean, I don't know. I'll leave you with this. I wear this ring, my wedding ring, and it's one that came later after we had the kids. And the inscription on the inside is everything else is dust. And there are 6 diamonds on this ring representing my wife and I and our 4 children. And as passionate as you've heard me speak about Lovesac and like everything we're trying to represent and all this cool stuff we're trying to do in the world, if I could have just been a good father, a good husband, a good person that influenced others for good, I will be perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, do
And so
good.
to me, this endeavor that I get to participate in and maybe even make a lot of money at is more like a hobby. And I say this at extreme risk. I'm the CEO of a public company, but like you can't replace my fundamental belief that human souls, particularly those that I've been entrusted with, are the most important thing.
Yeah. But, always endeavor to do good might be a good thought to leave people with. And I might just point out, as I wrap up the episode, your demonstration of one of the principles you spoke about much earlier in the podcast, which is when I asked her, without notice, a difficult question, you just became calm and thought for a moment, and you're completely comfortable with silence, which is not what most people are comfortable with on a podcast, because I need a second to give this some meaningful thought. And so you just relaxed under the wave, knowing another set was coming through, and demonstrated exactly what you had spoken about much earlier in the podcast. So, Shawn, a great way to finish a podcast is to demonstrate exactly what you've been talking about the whole time. And so I really want to thank you. I hope people hear this, that it is possible to have successful businesses that are truly noble at their heart, that are really endeavoring to do good and run with the psychology that we all know to be true. Make things that last. Don't create unnecessary clutter, waste, and damage in the world. Build a company that people would care about because of how it's behaving as much as it is about the products that it's producing, and know that that's going to be a hard path because you have to keep innovating. You can't take the soft option.
And if I can add, because it occurred to me earlier in this conversation, when you're willing to take the hard path, as long as you truly see, obviously, a path to growth and profitability, which has to be there. You can't sustain if you can't make it sustainable. But if you take the harder path, you will end up with a product, a concept, an idea, a technology, a platform that can compete at a high level because your competitors will take the easier path, because that's what water does.
Yeah.
It takes the easy path. There will always be a place to compete in the harder path.
That's fantastic. Shawn, thank you so much. I was very excited about this podcast episode because of what I'd been able to, find out about Lovesac and, what it represents. And I do truly believe it's the model for a company that the world actually wants. The world just needs to know how to find them.
Lovesac.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shawn.